Hey everyone, today I'm going to go over how I record, mix and produce shoegaze music at home. I'm going to give you 10 pieces of solid advice for whatever level you might be at in your musical journey. Some of this advice is going to be shoegaze specific, but a lot of it can be applied to any genre. If you get one thing from this video, I'd love it to be this. It's really not about the gear. The most important element when making music is the human element. Whether building a pedal board for a guitar tone or recording your song to tape, the human element is always more important than any piece of gear or equipment. So without further ado, my first point would be this. You can make great sounds with little to no budget. We started Pedal Partners out of nothing but our imagination. Unlike a lot of channels, we don't have a huge production team, a huge budget, or a multi-million-dollar studio. What we do have though is ideas. One of the top pieces of feedback Becca and Paige got for their debut single with Abstract and Sound in Abstract World was the production was pristine. Let's have a quick listen to that song now. You've just heard Abstract and Sound in Abstract World. We recorded and mixed that song on a 2015 MacBook, which could hardly run Netflix, to be honest, let alone work Logic. And we used a second generation Focusrite 2i2 interface. In fact, we were using that 2i2 until about 6 months ago until I finally couldn't stand it continuously cutting out. And the MacBook we were using until 2021. So it's really not about the gear you have at your disposal. It's about just being inspired and working hard to get the result that you're after. Every Pedal Partners video and every song we put out until recently was all produced using such lackluster equipment. Please don't let a lack of budget stop you from making something beautiful. My second point for all our shoegazers is you can record shoegaze guitars both DI'd or mic'd up. This is the difference. Let's have a listen to a mic take and then I'll show you a DI take. That mic take was done with two SM57s against my JC120. If you've been following the channel for a year or two or 3 or 4 or 5, but no longer than that because we haven't existed before then, you will know that this is my typical setup. I tend to love stereo sounds, especially for delays, modulations and reverbs. For this take, I use the Vial Oscillation and the Boss RV2. We tend to only do DI takes due to circumstance, i.e. we don't want to disturb the neighbors, or in a turn of fate, the neighbors are disturbing us with background noises such as lawnmowers. Leave a comment below and let me know your favorite take. Was it the mic'd take or the DI take? For my third piece of advice, here are 3 plugins I use for shoegaze. My fourth point is less about sound and guess more about equipment. Comfort is really important when it comes to headphones. I don't know if this one's kind of obvious. I think obviously people's first avenue when exploring a pair of headphones is the sound quality. This is obviously the most important element. You want a pair of headphones that won't muddy your mix. By this, I mean you want a pair of headphones that offer a neutral sound. A lot of consumer headphones will either be so cheap they're just really trebly, or on the other end of the spectrum, the higher end stuff like Beats, they'll boost the low ends, you know, the old bass boost. You don't want this for mixing. You want a nice neutral sound to present your music in the most neutral way possible. Anyway, after sound quality, comfort is so important. If you're mixing in, say, an apartment, or like me at Pedal Partners, just videos every day for hours and hours and hours, you're gonna want something that's comfy, because after a while, it's just your headphones will get uncomfy. I used a pair of Sennheisers, I think it was the DT770s, which are pretty good. Comfort-wise, I'd probably give them a 6 or a 7. More recently, I've been using these Audio Technicas. Again, probably a 6 or a 7. I haven't found my perfect 10 out of 10 for comfort level headphones just yet. My fifth piece of advice is listen to your mix through a good pair of monitors if you can. I have the Kali Audio LP6s, and Kali Audio are kind enough to send out their new Ultra Near Field Studio monitor system, which I think are great for both professionals and home studio musicians alike. It's important to listen to your mixes on a variety of systems. I'm sure everyone's heard of the classic car stereo method, taking your mix out to the car to listen how your Vauxhall Corsa's supremely underwhelming stereo system makes your mix sound. We always take out our mixes for Abstract and Violet out to the good old F150 for a pre-release listen. It's important to listen to your mix using similar setups to those that your audience will use. As for a good pair of monitors like we have here, there are a multitude of reasons I prefer these to headphones. As I just mentioned in my last point, headphones can get uncomfortable after extended periods of time. With speakers, you'll have less ear fatigue. Listening to monitors gives you a much better idea of how your music will sound in a real physical space, whether that be in your room or wherever it is that you have your setup. Man's got to put some good old Violet Oscillation in the club. You're going to dance into that music, I'm sure. I'll play some Violet Oscillation right now. You do a good jig for me, all right? Point 6 is just labelled microphones on my list here that I've gone written up for myself. I just love microphones. I think I'm gonna become a collector like I am with pedals, but like, it's just money, man. The microphones be costing bare money. But for beginners and professionals alike, I highly recommend the classic, the world-renowned Shure SM57. I think we have like 4 of these, and they work great for a whole host of applications. You can't beat a good old SM57. Guitars, drums, and even voice, they all like an SM57. In fact, I'm speaking into an SM57 right now. I think when we settle down and have a nice little home studio set up in the old United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, that I will get like a podcasting mic. I think it's like the SM50 something B or something. I don't know, man. But I'm gonna get one for speaking. But for now, we've just been using SM57s. Like I say, with Pedal Partners, we just grab and go. We just use what's at our disposal. I remember a couple of years, Paige went into Sweetwater and they tried to convince her she needed a more expensive microphone. I think they assumed she was like a vocalist or something, but now, boy, she's a multi-instrumentalist, crazy psych rock shoegazer. And I was like, Paige just, Paige actually knew. She just picked up the SM57. I was like, it's a microphone, guys. Does it record sound? Yep, check. Okay, then yeah, it's good. Let's hear some isolated takes of the 57 we recorded over the years. Sweeter than sweet. Point 7 is don't use wave plugins. With pedal partners and I guess life in general, I don't like being negative. There's enough negativity in this world. I'm going to try to save you the lecture, but it's like, it's best just to focus on the positive, alright? And just have a good time and do stuff you enjoy. And yeah, negativity, like, who needs it? This next piece of advice, guys, I'm going to just roll with it as it might help someone who needs it. I brought a good few waves plugins and used them for a year or two. After a while, they needed updated or they would become, I couldn't use them. I would have had to pay what was essentially an ongoing subscription for updates to my waves plugins. Hey, you might like subscription-based products. I know there's some subscription plugins out there, and that's all cool, but that's all gravy. But I didn't know this in advance with these wave plugins. It wasn't made clear to me. I personally like to own things. Waves kind of tempt you in with super low prices and crazy deals, and after being hooked on their plugins for a year or two, they then hit you with a good old paywall to update everything. Instead of face this subscription model, I decided just to disconnect and find alternatives. It was a bit of a pain having to change how we do things with some new plugins on pedal partners. Some of the wave plugins are alright, most of them are very outdated, but it's the paywall that really made up my mind. So I thought I'd save someone else the pain and just say my personal recommendation is not to get them, but I mean, you do you, and if that's what you want to do, then do it. Point number 8 is perhaps the most important. Buy all the most expensive gear and you'll be the best thing that ever walked this earth. The next Rick Rubin, the next Butch Vig, the next Kevin Parker, everyone will ask you, how did you do it? And you will point to all the Spike Lee gear. Whoops, how did this point get in here? Point 9, make music today in the setup you have right now rather than waiting for your dream setup. Like I mentioned at the start of this informational video film, with pedal partners, we've always been operating on whatever it is we've had available. If I had waited for my dream setup to come along, like the perfectionist I am, pedal partners wouldn't even be a thing. Same for you. Start making music with what you've got and you'll grow. Starting with cheap equipment effectively forces you to be a good musician, a good mix engineer, a good person. My 10th point is super cliche, but practice. It takes years of practice to get good at most things, and recording and mixing are no different. The more songs you record, the better your mixes will become. People learn in different ways. If you're like me, then just doing the thing will teach you all you need to learn. You'll make mistakes, you'll encounter problems, and the solutions to those problems will teach you. After a while, things just become second nature, instinctual. I'm sure a lot of you watching this are Shoegaze guitarists. How did you learn to play guitar? Apply that to recording and mixing. You'll figure it out, I believe in you. I felt bad that point 8 kind of took a point from you, so I'm going to give you point 11, gain staging. Gain staging has really become one of my favorite things in the last few years. Don't know if it's just the organization, the tidiness. I love it, the freak that I am. When I first started many moons ago, I'd always want my mixes to be louder than everyone else's. I pushed them dBs as far as they'd go. But over the years, I've learned a balanced mix is the key to a good sound and loud mix, not louder decibels. Gain staging spans the entire process. Don't record your instrumentation too loud. Allow each part to sit around minus 18 to minus 16 dB. In the mix, remember, every track is going to add up to the final stereo out loudness. Before mastering, I typically aim for about minus 60 dB reading on my stereo out. On the odd occasion, I'll let it get up to minus 3 dB, but any number smaller than that is strictly off limits for me. Hope this film helped you out. We have some really exciting stuff this year with pedal partners, so definitely subscribe if you want to be part of that, or don't subscribe if you don't want to be part of it. Yep, thanks for all the support, folks. Look out for more music and fun stuff. And if there's one thing you can do, keep on gazing, baby.